Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Here's a headline from you today. Major XRP amendment in serious jeopardy. Now, to be perfectly honest here, that sounds a bit more dramatic than would perhaps be necessary given what's actually happening here, but it is true that a bug was found in an amendment for the XRP ledger. And so, as a result, that does mean that if this amendment were to pass, as it was at the time with that bug, then you'd have faulty Layer 1 technology within the XRP ledger. Then the question is, of course, to what degree? Is it legitimately a big deal? Is it a security risk? And there's been a lot of arguments back and forth. And I'm going to share with you just a little bit of this, but there's been no shortage of coverage. So I'm going to share with you some perspectives, just a few actually, that I think do a good job encapsulating both sides of the argument. Because there's some people saying we should never go forward launching any sort of amendment with a known bug on the XRP ledger, and there are others that say, but it's not a security risk and it still functionally works. There's just a slight delay in transaction. We'll get into the specifics in a minute here. And so, you know, I thought through this, and mind you, I'm not a tech nerd type, and I appreciate the tech nerds within our XRP community, because like they're the ones in the know. They're the ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I very genuinely appreciate them. So all I can do, and this is all most people can do, because we're not an expert on most things in life in general, all we can do is listen to the arguments from both sides, those who would be closest to be considered in expert territory, and then we just interpret their arguments. We listen, and then we do our best to come to our own conclusions. It's like anything else in life, whether you're listening to financial experts, and I'm not, or if you're listening to political debates, whatever it is, you do your best because you're not going to be an expert in most things, and you're going to hear the arguments, and then you're going to find that perhaps you find one side more persuasive. And I'll just tell you here, for me personally, at the outset of this video, I'm kind of right in the middle because I don't think this is consequential. And I'll break down why as we get into the video, but I don't think to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to matter one way or another. And so I appreciate the degree to which people have genuine passion in debating all of this. And sometimes it might have seemed like some people are getting rude or testy, but I think it just shows that people genuinely do care. And so that part's a good thing. So I get it. But anyway, before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And I think the Crypto Basic did a pretty good job covering this. And so I'm going to get you some of the specifics in this article covering this topic, and then I'm going to give you perspective from a few people who have an actual say in this thing. And even if not an actual vote, they're just doing a good job, I think, arguing whatever side it is that they're on. And so here's the headline. XRPL validators revoke votes on XLS30D, AMM not launching on February 14th. And so, of course, this is the automated market maker. And I'm sure most of you are aware at this point, probably about all of you, but the amendment, it was sufficiently voted for. So in order to have an amendment approved on the XRP ledger, you have to have 80% approval plus one more vote. So I guess technically it would be what, 81%, or maybe, I don't know exactly, actually I don't know for sure. Maybe it's 80.0001 and it still counts. All I know is that 80% is not enough. So that's why I think the best way to word it is 80% approval plus one from the validators. And that was achieved. Now, once that's achieved, that sets a timer. It's coded into the XRP ledger. Once an amendment is voted on and it's approved, that sets a 2-week timer. And so as long as the vote threshold stays above that 80% plus one, then it's implemented. And so we were above that threshold that was going to get approved February 14th, but then the bug was found, and a lot of votes changed their minds. And so you have to have a fix implemented, and then you have to reset the timer once there's sufficient votes should that occur. And look, the good news is I think that about 100% of those who have actually voting power, just about everybody does want to have the automated market maker. It's just a question of, should we rush this thing through right now? Anyway, piece reads as follows. The eagerly anticipated XLS30D amendment for the XRPL, set to introduce an automated market maker, will not launch on February 14th as more validators revoke their votes. This is due to a critical bug discovered in the AMM code. RippleX, the development arm of Ripple, identified the issue during an extended testing citing a potential obstacle for multiple AMM transactions executing in the same ledger. And so I'll just say this after having heard arguments from both sides. In my humble opinion, calling this bug a critical bug seems like more than just a stretch. That seems like not an accurate description of what's going on. In fact, to me, and fine, I'm not a tech nerd, I'm not an expert, but I heard the arguments on both sides, like I was saying. And what did I find more persuasive? The arguments that indicated this is a very low level thing, and actually the XRP ledger, even if implemented with the bug, it still functions. That's pretty. In fact, I don't even see that point disputed. It's just a question of should you ever, under any circumstance, publish, an amendment code to the XRP ledger layer 1 if there is a known bug. And so that's where a lot of the passion gets to, even because there is this broad recognition. This is not some sort of thing that's going to, hamper the security of the XRP ledger or result in funds being lost or anything of the sort. Nothing like that. But I appreciate there are enough people within our ecosystem that feel this strongly. Like that does make me feel good. That instills confidence. But anyway, piece continues. The bug primarily affects an edge case where the trading fee is set below 0.01%. In this case, the bug occurs when there is a cluster of transactions on the AMM, causing some transactions to halt for one ledger, resulting in a 3 to 5 seconds delay before execution. Notably, once the AMM is created, the transactions must wait for one ledger to close before execution. After this ledger closes, the transactions execute normally, except for the AMM vote transaction. Notably, the first AMM vote transaction would execute correctly, but the AMM vote transactions that follow will continue to wait for one ledger to close within 3 to 5 seconds before execution. RippleX has proposed a fix and is currently reviewing it. The proposed fix addresses the issue, ensuring correct identification of default fields within AMM inner objects and reinforcing stability in both the core ledger and AMM code. Despite the relatively minor impact of the bug, XRPL validators have taken a stand by revoking their votes on the XLS30D amendment. Recall that the amendment reached the required validator consensus on February 1st, with implementation ETA at February 14th. And so, based on everything that I've seen, again, it would still function, but certain transactions in rare cases, super rare cases, edge cases as they call them, would have to wait for one additional ledger to close, meaning 3 to 5 seconds would be lost, but it would still work. There is no hint of any sort of security concern, this or that. And by the way, I also note here, it's funny that they call this, at this part of the article, a relatively minor impact of the bug. But then what did I share with you up here? They wrote, this is due to a critical bug. Well, which is it, damn it? It's the second one. This is not something that's going to devastate, even if it were to get approved this way. No. And so there was this perspective from Francis Bovine Swift on social media platform X. He's at Swift Bovine. He is the creator of the XRP Rich List. And here's what he had to say. Looking through the code comments, I don't see one comment from a developer that states anything that would warrant postponing activation. This patch is a change that impacts how objects are instantiated and the philosophy behind that. No one states that the old method is not secure or that once it was implemented one way, it couldn't be migrated to the new philosophy in a future update. And so, folks, what he's saying here is there's been no evidence that this is some sort of security risk or people could lose funds, anything disastrous whatsoever. And if approved, there's no reason to believe that that couldn't be modified anyway. And I from what I've seen, that is correct. I haven't seen any sort of strong, really any argument at all that wouldn't be true, to be honest with you. And then he says, was canceling the vote discussed outside of the public comment area? If so, what was the decision based on? Basically, this fix implements a new way of creating objects, but the old way wasn't really broken. Were there any recommendations from the coders that led to this delay? And then there was this post from Expector, and they wrote the following. After careful reconsideration, we've changed our vote on the AMM amendment to nay. It's a critical feature. There is a known issue we need to fix first before activating. Voting otherwise would be irresponsible and compromise our integrity, and it would be a dangerous precedent. No amendment should pass with known issues. We strive to uphold the highest standards for the XRP ledger and its community. And so, folks, here's why I'm in the middle. because I find the arguments from both sides compelling. Well, so of course that puts me right in the middle, but when you consider the fact that we've had the XRP ledger for over a decade without the automated market maker, is it going to kill us if we had to wait a few weeks or a month or a few months to get the damn thing approved without the bug? Would that kill us? Well, no, of course not. So in that sense, I'm like, well, if we just wait and do it right, okay, I don't care. That's fine. Now, on the flip side, if this thing actually were pushed through, since there's not a soul that I've seen argue that this is a security risk or that people could lose funds or anything that would actually be horrific. If it were to get pushed through, if that's what the decentralized ecosystem wanted to do, I'd feel about the same as I do right now. I'd be like, well, okay, I mean, there's no rush, but hey, if you want to get it through, since there's not a single human that has argued that this is going to be some sort of critical issue or that it's going to materially harm anything, or so that's, do you see why I'm in the middle now? Because it doesn't matter one way or another in the end. Now, not everybody believes that. See, that's why I'm in the middle. Some say that it's a bad precedent, and I respect where those people are coming from. Like, I don't think that's a bad argument. I'm recognizing that either way in the end, I'm not convinced that there's going to be any material consequence one way or another. After hearing both sides, and I've listened to a lot of people talk, I'm just highlighting a few perspectives for this video. I read a lot of stuff, and I listened to Spaces. I didn't get to listen to it live, but I listened to about a third of a Spaces that was hosted by Vet. Here you can see @vet_x0, XRPL DUNL validator. And so it was interesting. And actually, by the way, in that Spaces that was from this afternoon, David Schwartz even jumped in, and he was basically applauding how people are responding. And he kind of noted, like, so even if there is passion, if things are getting a little testy, it's because people in the community care. And so here was perspective from Daniel Keller @Daniel_WWF, CTO at Eminence. And he wrote the following. And look, again, even though I'm kind of in the middle because I'm kind of like either way, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by anybody that it's going to be disastrous one way or another. That's basically my argument. That's my stance, because nobody has convinced me that it would be disastrous one way or another. And so I find what Francis Bovine Swift to be fair and reasonable and compelling, and I find what Daniel writes here, which I'm about to share with you, to be fair and reasonable and compelling. It comes down to just opinion. It's just totally subjective here in terms of what types of standards you want to live by, what you find reasonable. And so here's what he said. I have decided to withdraw my vote on the proposed AMM amendment. After careful consideration and discussion within our community, the proposed feature, as it stands, goes against the best practices we strive to uphold. Specifically, my concern lies in releasing a feature with a known issue. While I understand the urgency and importance of implementing updates and improvements to the XRPL, adhering to rigorous standards of quality and reliability is essential. Releasing a feature with a known issue compromises the integrity of best practices and sets a dangerous precedent for future amendments. And so let me just pause to say this. I don't think that's none of what I just shared with you, I don't think that's unreasonable, and the rest of what I'm going to share with you in a moment that he wrote, I don't think that's unreasonable either. I will say, and this is just me thinking out loud here, but in terms of this being if it were to get approved, which it's obviously not, it's not getting approved in its current state with the bug. It's not happening. But I'm saying, if it were, would that genuinely set a bad precedent? Well, let me just say this: if there were a problem with a separate, completely unrelated amendment in the future, if there were potential consequences that would, be harmful from a security perspective or a loss of funds perspective, I don't think that a single validator would vote to approve that. So if this got approved, would it set precedent that we can just all willy-nilly approve anything, no matter what the bail? No, you would have to consider what the actual bug is and the ramifications. I don't think that it would necessarily set a precedent. Like, for instance, think about what happened with XLS20 with NFTs. Do you guys remember that whole debacle? Kind of similar, except for that was more serious. So I'm just sitting here thinking, like, say this happened first. And let's say in a fantasy land, this isn't going to happen, but let's say that the automated market maker got approved with the bug. Would XLS20, if it came after that, would it have gotten approved because there's a precedent set? And with that bug, it would have gone. I'm not convinced of that at all. So I don't think his argument's bad, but because again, it's subjective, But would it start making people lean that way? Maybe. Again, it's not a bad argument. I find it hard to believe that people wouldn't take into consideration the seriousness of each individual amendment in terms of what the bug is. That's all I'm saying. And then he says, we do not move and break things fast. We never have, we never will. No amendment shall pass with known issues. As an advocate for the XRPL and as an infrastructure provider, it is my responsibility to prioritize the stability and functionality of the ledger above all else. Rushing the implementation of a feature with known issues undermines my commitment to excellence and erodes trust among every ledger user. And so again, I'll pause and say that is totally fair. And different people are going to have different standards. There'll be some people, and there are people who think, okay, but there's no harm to the actual ledger and we can fix it very quickly afterwards. It materially doesn't matter. Some people are making that argument. He has a different perspective, and I respect whatever your stance is. I'm kind of like, again, it's the reason I'm in the middle. I don't think it makes a material difference, but I respect where he's coming from because he's saying, no, I don't care how small the bug. This damn thing doesn't get published if it's up to me. And he gets a vote. So totally respectable. And then he says, in light of these concerns, I cannot support the proposed amendment in its current form. However, I remain fully committed to working collaboratively with you and others to address these issues and explore alternative solutions that align with our principles and values. I would like to see AMM deprecated and AMM v2, which should include fixes, being put up for vote, avoiding an XLS20D situation. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation in this matter. I look forward to continued dialogue and collaboration as we strive to uphold the highest standards for the XRPL and its community. My vote for AMM has been withdrawn. My vote has been changed and should be reflected with the next flag ledger. The next release for Ripple D is scheduled for 4th of March. A fix for the issue is already being reviewed. So again, like I said, totally fair point, and I respect where he's coming. It's just, that's why I'm in the middle. The reason I don't feel strongly, and I frequently have very strong opinions, if you've been following me for more than 5 seconds, you probably know that, it's because, again, I don't think it makes a material difference in the end. It's more about personal preference, and in this case, like Daniel says here, it's just like, no. He has a very high bar. He's like, no, nothing gets published if there's even the tiniest bug. Totally respect that. Other people are like, yeah, but you can just fix it pretty quickly. It doesn't matter. Just approve the thing because it doesn't harm anything. So again, like I keep saying, it's personal preference here. But that, again, is why I don't have a strong opinion on this, because in the end, we're going to have the same result. This, because everybody wants this just about. It's going to get approved. It will functionally work. That's a virtual certainty. And it's going to be fine. It's just a question of how messy is the path to us getting there. And the answer is a little bit messy, but that's okay. I love that the community's having a rigorous discussion on the matter. I'll just say that. And I do believe that. And then there was this post at 4:12 p.m. today, Central Time, from Vet. He said, Ripple D 2.1 release candidate proposed. The XRP Ledger AMM Edge case fix now also got pushed into release. Candidate Ripple D 2.1. Things are moving fast now. Usually 1 to 2 weeks testing before official release, thanks to all Ripple D devs. And so, again, presumably, sooner than later, this is going to be fixed. It is going to get approved, and it's fine. So whatever side of this argument you're on, whether you think we should have just pushed it through because it wasn't a security risk and we would have just done the fix anyway, or if you think, no, I want this level of perfection, whatever your perspective is, I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds reasonable. That's pretty much where I lie on this. Because, again, in the end, it doesn't materially matter. And I don't think, like, in terms of the precedent thing, it's just like... Again, I think that it has to do with the severity of each individual case as to whether or not a bug would ever be... Because, like, think about this. The people that are okay with this tiny, tiny, low level bug getting approved, knowing that it would be fixed pretty much instantly, those people would not be okay with bugs of a much more substantial nature, all sorts of potential risks, security risks and otherwise. So, again, in terms of, setting some sort of precedent, I find it hard to believe that anybody that cares about the XRP ledger would push through anything if there was even the tiniest chance that there was a security risk or a risk of a loss of funds. I think that there are zero participants within our ecosystem that would change regardless of whether or not this thing went through. And again, it's not going through in the current state. But even if it did, would that make people be like, get a little bit more loose with stuff? I find that hard to believe. Just like, well... And I could be wrong. I admit I could be wrong. But we're still going to get it. The good news is we've had rigorous conversation. I've mostly just been listening because I'm not one of the tech nerds. But we're going to get it. It's going to be fine. And people a year from now, by and large, will have forgotten that we even had this discussion in all likelihood. But that's the latest. That's where it's at right now. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm willing to bet that some of you are going to feel a lot more strongly than me, and that's fine. It comes down to personal opinion. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.